This last Thursday, I, 29 female, went over to my boyfriend Jay's 25 house for dinner and brought my son, preschooler, with me. Jay and I have been together for a year and a half now, and he's the most amazing man in the world. He's been amazing with my son. His bio father is not in his life, and I can genuinely see him as the one. Jay's parents came over as well. It's not that I don't get along with them. I've only ever seen them 3 times before. I've not had any time to really bond with them, I guess. They had never met my son in person, but they knew about him. By the time I arrived, Jay's parents were already there and helping him finish dinner. We greeted each other, and Jay's dad asked, "And who's this little guy?" I introduced them to my son and then introduced Jay's parents as grandma and grandpa to my precious boy. I didn't notice then, but all 3 became quiet almost immediately. I ended up waiting in the living room alone for almost half an hour before dinner, and things just were incredibly awkward for the rest of the night. My son did end up calling his parents by grandma and grandpa, and I quickly noticed both of them would be very disingenuous and awkward about it over dinner, but they didn't say anything to me about it. They didn't stick around for long, but when they left, both were very cold to me. I asked Jay what their deal was, and he lost it on me. He claims I put him in an incredibly awkward position. His parents apparently didn't think that we were that serious yet, and began questioning him if I was only using him as a replacement daddy. He said that it was way out of line to introduce them that way, without even talking to him beforehand. I think it's ridiculous. If one day he's going to be my son's stepdad, then why go through this formal nonsense? He claimed that's not the point, and we fought until I stormed out. We haven't talked since, and I've simply been waiting for an apology. I talked with my sister about it last night, and she said she was mortified to hear this. She also didn't get that we were all that serious, and she never felt like Jay intended to take on a dad role. This has got me questioning if I was wrong. You are the idiot. You basically decided that Jay and his family are now your son's family, all on your own, with no discussion beforehand, and that is why everyone is upset. While I'm sure no one is against the idea outright, the formal nonsense is a very necessary step when it comes to merging families. To be honest, you probably need to have a serious discussion with Jay about where this is heading sooner rather than later, if both his parents and your sister didn't think you two were that serious. What if he doesn't see himself as a father to your child, or doesn't see the relationship that serious either? This is why we need the formal nonsense and talking it through with everyone involved. Are you really shocked that the parents of a 25-year-old aren't ready to be called grandma and grandpa yet? Yikes! This is so cringe, and I have major secondhand embarrassment. Next up, OP takes her boyfriend on a dinner date, pulls out a veil, and the servers roll back screens to reveal a gospel choir and a minister ready to marry them in front of the whole restaurant. Wow, how extremely awkward. Also, did you think for half a second how devastated your son will be when you guys break up and grandma and grandpa are no longer in his life? How utterly confusing for him. You didn't think about anyone but yourself and your childish fantasy. You created an unnecessary core memory for your poor son. He'll likely never forget the moment he was introduced to people you called his grandparents, and will develop feelings of rejection and abandonment, all because of your selfishness. And even though I'm a woman, if I were your boyfriend, I would break up with you over this. There was a line and you just tra-la-la skipped over that line. Update number 1. Okay, I messed up. I genuinely thought that Jay would be okay with this. Jay's always treated my son so well. I guess I misread treating him kindly as being okay with being his father figure. I'm pretty sure I ruined this for myself, but most importantly, I hurt my son through all of this. So I called Jay and apologized. We're gonna take a break. I'm gonna look into making sure I didn't scar my kid with this. Update number 2. People still seemed interested in my story about introducing my boyfriend Jay's parents to my son as grandma and grandpa. I thought I would update everyone on what happened. Immediately when I realized I was in the wrong, I called Jay and apologized for what happened. He told me he needed some space and wanted to take a break. I ended up calling his mother as well and apologized profusely. His mother forgave me, and after I explained my reasoning, said she didn't hold it against me. However, in retrospect, I think she was only being nice to me, knowing her son was going to end the relationship. Speaking of, Jay ended the relationship. I decided to take the advice given here about sitting down with Jay and getting on the same page about our relationship. I also saw some of the comments here about taking a break equals relationship ended. So I called Jay and told him that I wanted to talk sooner rather than later about this. We met yesterday, and while I feel our talk went well, it was really obvious to me that Jay was done with the relationship. He said that while he always knew that me and my son were a package deal, he hadn't decided at that point if he was truly going to take on the dad role for my son. He felt like my interpreting his niceness and acceptance of my son as a fatherly role was a red flag for him, overall, especially because we had never talked about it at all. He said that the real problem he had was me deciding that his parents were grandma and grandpa without even talking to him about it. My original refusal to apologize and expecting him to as well were part of it as well. There are other things he brought up that I feel are beyond this issue anyway, so I'm going to leave them out. Many of the criticisms left on my original post lined up with what he said, so I can really say for certain I messed up big time. I apologized, but I knew there was really no hope of saving this, so I didn't push when he said he felt like we should end the relationship. Overall, I realized that I really need to work on my own expectations for my partner and how he'll fit into my son's life. I also really need to work on my own communication skills. I, 20 female, am babysitting my niece, preschooler, for the week while my sister's away on a business trip. My niece misses her mom, so to cheer her up, I put a couple of treats in her lunch. Her lunch was a turkey and cheese sandwich with cucumbers and avocado, carrot sticks and ranch, apple slices, cookie, fruit snacks, brownie, juice box. Clearly not the healthiest, but also this is a special treat, and she has all 5 food groups. I dropped my niece off at 9, and at 10, snack time, I got a call from the teacher saying that I had to drop off a new lunch because my niece's was too unhealthy. I told her to give my niece the fruits or vegetables if she has a problem with the treats, and she told me she threw away the lunch because it was distracting to the other kids. I decided to call the office and tell them that I needed to pull my niece out for an appointment at 11. Lunch is at 11:30, and that she'd be back by the end of lunch. So at 11, I picked her up, and we got Happy Meals, cookies, fruit snacks, and milkshakes. Then at 12, end of lunch, I dropped her off with her Happy Meal box and her almost finished milkshake. The teacher saw this and was fuming. She told my sister what happened because shortly after, I got a call from my sister saying that I was being petty and should have just dropped off a new sandwich. Am I the idiot for pulling my niece out and filling her up on sugar because her teacher threw away her lunch? Not the idiot. What the actual heck? Now kids aren't allowed to even bring lunches with a treat in them? What kind of power trip do you have to be on to throw away a preschooler's lunch? So if you had dressed your niece in very pretty clothes that bothered the other kids, would the teacher have ripped them off, thrown them away, and told you to bring ratty ones? I suppose if your niece had been showboating and bragging about, "Oh, look how awesome my lunch is," there might be some grounds for the teacher to get involved here. Or was this just the teacher seeing in the box at snack time? If so, she should have stayed in her freaking lane. This sounds like a teacher making a big show of what happens to children whose adults pack them cookies and brownies. It's meant to make the kids keep the parents in line. Mine protested when I wanted to pack them some leftover brownies from last night's dessert, and of course to prevent food envy in the other kids. The teacher went all the way overboard though, and threw out the healthy items with the unhealthy, so she can reimburse OP for those. If I were OP, I'd have marched into the middle of the class in front of all the kids and handed the teacher a bill, demanding they immediately reimburse me for the food they recklessly wasted. Of course, I'd also like to ask them, how could they ever waste good food like that, knowing that there are starving people in this world? If they want to make a big show of things, then they can darn well expect the same in return. Avocados are not cheap. Food isn't cheap. So, my daughter is a young teen, and I had agreed to let her go to a sleepover at one of her friends' houses. Her friend has been over to my house a few times, and I've met her parents a few times too. So, I dropped her off last night, and maybe 3 hours later, I got a text from my daughter, who was in a McDonald's drive-thru, and told me that they wouldn't get her anything to eat and won't let her have any snacks. I called her, and before she said anything, I could hear them laughing about it. Luckily, that McDonald's was on the way to where I was driving to, so I went there and spotted them. My daughter ran to me and their faces looked shocked. I said not to call or message about interacting with my daughter ever again and left. She ran to you. There might have been more going on. Being upset and humiliated is enough for some children to literally run to their parents, but not all. And if they refuse to buy her food at McDonald's after inviting her over and laughed about it, what else happened or happens at their houses? Who else doesn't get McDonald's and laughed at for it? Honestly, if you are on that tight of a budget, you can't afford to feed your daughter's friend. Either don't invite her to the sleepover, or you just maybe don't go to McDonald's. I'm glad your daughter texted you and you didn't hesitate. She won't forget how you showed up for her. I'm amused by their surprise when you rolled up to that Mickey D's to rescue your daughter from that situation, essentially. What the heck did they think was going to happen? Those people are mean. I'm glad you were there for your kid. I, 27 female, have 3 children, a male preteen, a young male child, female toddler. My partner and I both work, but since my hours are more flexible, I've picked up most of the childcare, such as dropping the children off at school/childminder, picking them up, taking them to the park, doing homework, etc., as well as 50% of the housework, so meals, ironing, etc. My partner will help after a little nagging, and he'll usually take the children to the park on the weekend. Last week I didn't feel good come Saturday, and I felt awful dizzy, had headaches, hot flashes, etc., and I was just so tired. So I asked my partner to care for the children that day. My youngest is clingy. She gets upset whenever I leave the room and goes through a phase where the only word she knows is no. So my partner was in and out, asking for me to handle it. My middle child has a habit of asking me to do something or where something is, while not even considering asking their dad. Partner came in and asked if I'd help settle my youngest as she requested me. I refused and may have snapped that he's her dad and to leave me alone. I will admit my final fuse was when my middle child came in crying because apparently my oldest was looking at him funny. So I told him to tell his dad, and when he left, I locked the door. My head was killing me, especially around a crying child. My middle child was upset because he thought he'd upset me. My partner was like, I know you're sick, but just offering cuddles to the children would have been nice, and I needed help. You know the youngest gets upset without you, and apparently you're the only one who calms her down. It's not that he's not around that she's unsettled. It's just natural for children to pick one person, and the doctors have said she'll grow out of it. My partner's upset, although even a week later, I'm still feeling dizzy with hot flashes. He just wants an apology, but I just don't feel like I need to. Am I the idiot? Not the idiot. Your partner needs to grow up and start being a father. You're entitled to your own time, Mama. I'm glad you're feeling better. This was a one-time thing. You were sick, and if anything, you could tell your partner you didn't want to be near the children to keep them from getting sick. Unbelievable that he couldn't help you out for one day. Hey, I know you feel like hot garbage, but I had to deal with cranky kids, and I think you should apologize for being too sick to help. It's weaponized incompetence. He wanted you to cuddle with them while you're sick. Does he want to care for a sick wife and 3 sick kids? And every time he barges into your room, needing your help, he's proving that to them, that he's not someone that can handle their care and needs on his own, or if he even wants to. He needs to step up and parent his kids. They're getting overly attached to you because you're the main parent in their eyes, when it should be equal. He needs to learn how to settle them and handle their problems and disputes independently. You need to get well and can't if you aren't allowed to rest and heal. Yep, imagine if husband was the one who was sick. I bet he wouldn't get out of bed for anything, much less his kids. He's their father. He's not doing you a favor by watching them. Ask him what he'll do if this medical condition turns out to be serious or requires you to stay in the hospital. Please get yourself checked and hold your ground on this. You shouldn't have to lock your door to get a minute of rest. I, 34 female, live in southern Arizona. I have a new neighbor, an Irish woman, 30s, who recently moved here with her American husband. They moved into the apartment next door about a month ago. Before that, they lived in New England, where the states are much, much smaller. Comparison for anyone who's never thought about it, the state of Massachusetts from north to south is the same as the distance from Tucson to Phoenix. I'm single, and my neighbor's husband is out of town for a couple of weeks for work, so she thought it would be fun to take a day trip to show her around the area. Great. She wanted to start at the Grand Canyon. Not great. Then she thought it would be nice to pop over to Las Vegas for lunch. Oh no. I tried to tell her that she had picked places that were much farther apart than she thought, but she insisted it couldn't be that bad. So I pulled up Google Maps and showed her just how far we were talking about. That if we drove from here to the Grand Canyon, it would be 7 hours if we never stopped for food or gas. Then 4 hours from the Grand Canyon to Las Vegas, and that's not even counting the drive home. It's not an easy, fun day trip. After seeing the times, she now believes me about the distance, but she says it was rude to pull up a map to show her. She said that if she wasn't getting what I was saying, it's my fault for explaining badly, and that using Google to show her was just an idiot move to treat her like she was stupid or a child. I suggested a few places closer to us, but she yelled, "You better look up a map and make sure it's not too far first," and returned to her apartment. I really didn't mean to upset her, and I definitely don't think she's stupid or a child. I just didn't know how else to convince her that the trip she wanted to take wasn't possible. Am I the idiot? LOL, bye Felicia. Not the idiot, OP. How else are you supposed to show someone the distance between points A, B, and C? Interpretive dance? Showing her a map is a perfectly logical and respectful way to demonstrate the distances and times involved. I always do it when I want to find driving distances for myself. Her reaction seems childish. She disagreed with what you told her, so you showed her hard evidence. She should have given you more respect, since you've lived there longer than her and were likely to know better already. And once you backed up your point, she should have conceded. Geez, these are the tourists who end up dead or needing rescuing in Australia. Oh no. People already living in an area are much dumber and less informed than those who move there and do no research. Most of these backwood yokels can't even read. It's a proven fact. She was likely embarrassed that she made such a basic mistake, and rather than thanking OP for educating her and blaming it on her own past experience with much smaller states and regions, she took out her embarrassment on the OP.